Okay, recording is underway. Thank you, everyone. Hello and welcome. Many of you, we've already had a chance to kind of say hello through the chat. Today, my close collaborator, Kevin, and I are going to share some learnings on aligning the potential of AI with the humanism of user experience. This is very much from firsthand experience of our journey at Dscout, enriching an already established enterprise product with new Gen AI capabilities. It is a chock-a-block session, but we are hoping to have a few minutes for some Q&A. So if questions arise, please drop them in the Q&A section. If we can't get to them, we are going to try and maybe async after the fact, reach out and connect with people. So if you haven't heard of Dscout, we're an enterprise experience research platform for capturing media-rich, in-context insights from high-quality participants. And our users are you. Really, many of the people attending this kind of event were UXRs, designers, PMs, and anyone who cares about the reality of the users and is in kind of these adjacent roles. I think fundamentally, though, just to kind of drive home what Dscout does and what we're helping people do is letting the most influential companies in the world really bring like the plight and the delight and the realities of their users into very important decision-making moments. So from very foundational strategic planning and research, really up to that kind of sprint level evaluative research for like that rapid decision-making. And it's all happening in the platform. And what excites me so much about being a part of the Dscout team is that we really are working to make a more human tomorrow. And every day, thousands of research moments unfold in the platform as our users, you all, work to understand your users. So a lot of meta moments in our world here. So as part of our structure today, we're going to talk a bit about Dscout. This will be far from a demo. This is really about principles and much less about Dscout. So if we're trying to make it more human tomorrow, I would be remiss not to introduce myself. My career origin story is founded in product design with a specialization in ethnographic research and design strategy. For the last 9 years, I've been a product leader at Dscout. I joined when we were about 20 people, driven by the observation that our mobile phones, remember 9 years ago, our mobile phones would be a great conduit for remote in-context research. Now we're an award-winning enterprise product with really fully established and growing product leadership team. It has been very exciting, if not a little exhausting, as is the case, I'm sure, for most of us when we're passionate about the work we're doing. I can't help actually to the point of passion. I am a passionate parent. I love things that go fast, wheels, wings, sails, whatever it is. And I certainly love a good YouTube rabbit hole to expand my sphere of strange knowledge. And just lastly, to say, kind of getting back into the heart of this topic here, I love solving problems that provide meaningful utility, really get a job done, but also delight. I think that combination is very important. So Kevin and I are going to cover two main sections. I'll take the first. Kevin will introduce himself before he kicks off the second. And we're structuring this to give you about 6 in total principles to really help you bring the potential of AI to your users with great product experience. So taking a half step back, right? If we think about the last decade, consumers have developed a very mature understanding and high expectations for user experience. And they've also built the vocabulary and the platforms to share said expectations. And so this really means that great UX is important. And Gen AI is introducing all kinds of new considerations into our practice, introducing kind of new rhythms in our thinking and how we want to support user experiences. And I think it would be, my point of view is that it's undeniable over the next couple of years, Gen AI will become ubiquitous in nearly every application, particularly digital applications that we're using. And it's important that we're investing in great UX as a differentiator in parallel to this. It's paramount to have that delightful experience that makes users want to come back time and time again and help us build value for our organizations. So I'm going to cover these three principles in a little bit of detail. This is not exhaustive of everything we consider, nor are they exhaustive of everything you should consider. They're also not overly fancy or clever. They're principles, and they should be familiar and commonsensical for sure. And actually, one thing I would love to know, if people feel free to share in the chat, even just maybe additional principles that you all are integrating into your practice that would be beneficial for Kevin and I to know, and for all the attendees here today. And then lastly, I do want to say it would be criminal if I didn't remind this group that it is crucial to do research and deeply understand your users' needs before endeavoring on any of this. It doesn't matter what principles you're applying to if you're not applying it to a meaningful problem of your users. So our first UX principle that I want to cover is support and enhance. And it's this reality that every job to be done has elements that are important to achieving the success that you need, but not at the heart of the matter, or really like the pleasurable part of the role. Lots of rote and repetitive and inefficient to-dos that are still a big requirement in achieving that. And so our goal at Dscout is to help people do their jobs better. So very much with you and not in place of you, and help you be kind of more efficient in ways that let you apply your deepest skills and strengths to the task at hand. So we've actually achieved this first principle. It manifests against one of the largest and kind of most ridiculous pain points in research. This pain that people ask for, right? All great research has this moment of overwhelm when your data starts coming in, right? So you've set out to do research, and now you've got maybe 50 or 100 participants submitting content. And in Dscout, that looks like, show me every time you make a meal choice. Show me every time you make a financial decision. Show me every time, fill in the blank kind of your service or product. But now as a researcher, this excitement about getting the research, it's the overwhelm. How am I going to pour through 100 videos or 100 open-ended responses? And all this content can take a lot of time. So we've done this by injecting AI summaries. And what we're really trying to do here is help speed you to some learnings and save you lots of time, so that as your research is running, you get a sense of what's really working for you, what's coming out, what are things I may want to follow up on later. And it's this ability to support you that we think is really important. Certainly, I am not alone having had started a workday at 7 a.m. to power through all kinds of research insights to try and get ready to help the team in planning at 10 a.m. And the idea here is that this can help save a lot of time and support you to do kind of more great work. The second principle I want to get into is transparency and control. We know that this builds trust, and trust is a real crucial component to a great user experience. You want to make sure your users know when Gen AI is being used, understand how that content is being created, and even when possible, give them a chance to amend or hide and show that content. And one of the ways we've embodied that at Dscout works with our AI themes. So like that question summary I was kind of showing before, these are automatically generated to save time. But when we start getting into concepts of like, these are the themes that are manifesting, we're flirting with analysis, a very human and very core to our user skill set. And to make sure that people feel good about that, we're helping save them time, sure, but we're also giving them a way to trace back through that transparency of how this content was generated. I'm sure many of you have heard RAG. This is very much kind of that capability, that tech in action. So we would have a theme. Again, this is sort of healthy eating or meal moments, and somebody's talking about eating eggs daily. And if you click on that theme, we're going to immediately show you the entries, the content that is responsible for that theme. But then even a step deeper, if you were to click on that eating eggs daily tag, that's going to highlight the exact text that helped generate that theme, because many themes may come out of a response, and really helping you build confidence in what this technology is doing. Because I would be cavalier not to say that it won't be perfect. There will be moments where the accuracy is maybe less than the desire, but on the whole, it's very good. And we want to make sure people can see and understand that journey to get there. But even we'll do little control moments, like you could hide and show all the AI analysis. Maybe you've got a stakeholder you don't want seeing this content. or you've got somebody who you want to really exercise their research chops and get into the detail without maybe having this power up that is some of this AI generated content. So having that kind of control and transparency, I think, is very important. But another thing, maybe speaking more to the designers here, that we think is also important is being clear and when you're using Gen AI. And at Dscout, we have our design library. It's called Particle. It's this really great collaboration between our product designers and our engineers. Does all the great things a design system does: continuity of experience, efficiency. But we also built out an entire new, I risk by calling it a sub-brand. We don't mean it to be a brand, but like this subset of componentry that is styled uniquely to make sure it's always clear when AI is being utilized within the platform to help support your needs. So, a whole array of icons and colors, and even a couple of behaviors to ensure that it's very, very clear. All right, the third and kind of final UX principle that I'm going to cover here is safety and security. And I think this one is a little bit more of a stretch for designers and researchers, maybe day to day, and how we think about user experience. So I think this is maybe one that manifested with a little more fervor and a little differently than maybe we would have been designing products 2 or 3 years ago. So undoubtedly, in many facets, we've been using Gen AI or Gen AI adjacent technology for quite a while, right? Mapping apps and transcription technology. But the breakthroughs of the last 18 months have really been eye-opening due to their power, the potential, and I think very importantly, the accessibility. And while this technology is quite sort of untamed or nascent, so is our experience building with it, right? This is a very new material we have in our hands. And it behaves and acts very differently, right? It's non-deterministic. And Kevin's going to get into a lot more detail on that. And we have to really pay attention. So, we need to really think about the subtleties of the user experience because we want to be harmless and we want to be helpful and we want to be honest, because the opposite is atrocious, and the risk is very real if we're not being pragmatic and thinking about this in the products we're making with this technology, and remembering, right, user experience is so much more than just the UI. It's this holistic element of it. So we've got a sophisticated pipeline of prompts and guardrails, but we also actually have some features where it's the ability to have like in-product feedback or even emergency kind of staff side features. If we need to delete something that was kind of harmful or something strange, we have all those tools and we think about that as part of our product experience. So I do just kind of reiterate how important that is. But I think conversely, there are other pieces that we have to think about. And I don't think this is so unique to Dscout, but maintaining the security of people's private information, right? In the research space, again, we have the most influential companies asking people very personal things. Everybody wants their data protected in our ecosystem. And I consider it to be a part of the user experience. And I think as designers and researchers, we really need to be very familiar with this freight train of acronyms that really influence the products we're making. And if we don't understand those, don't have a good grasp on that, we're going to miss the mark. And I think actually it was delightful to hear we have such an international audience today to even remember these are things that differ wildly across markets that we create products for. And so really being attentive to how that works out. Understanding data retention, understanding the ability to have someone opt in, like all these little examples can have maybe manifest very small in the UI, but become very important in the UX. So I'm going to wrap up and just to kind of, again, I think plain and sensical, right? You want to support and enhance your user. You want to provide transparency and control to build trust, and safety and security is really paramount in this very new dynamic material. Okay, so with that, I'm going to pass it over to Kevin.
Hey everyone, thanks Jonathan. Hi, I'm Kevin. I head up the AI effort here at Dscout. I've been here now for, wow, a year next week. So the time has flown. I've really been doing AI related research and development now for the past 15 years. I completed my PhD in aerospace engineering with special emphasis in AI. More specifically, I used AI to help make decisions for helicopters to study their maneuverability. Quickly after graduating, I was introduced to startups through a startup weekend in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and my love for wearing many hats and building products and just focusing on experiences just really skyrocketed from there. From a human note, I love nature. I live in the mountains. In my spare time, I enjoy hiking in nature with my wife and my two young children. And really, what I'm here today to speak about is I love leveraging cutting edge technologies, in this case, AI, to revolutionize new products, services, and experiences. Before we move on to the next slide, I just want to take a note on the AI and data products image. So all the images in my presentation were generated by AI. And so I'd just like to take a note that I prompted the AI to provide me with the realization of a metaphorical AI in faded pinks and blacks, and I applied a pixelation filter. This image can be a bit alarming. It looks like some sort of like clown skeleton thing. I don't know if this is really what it thinks of itself, but this can be a little bit alarming. And so I'm not sure if this is how some of you feel about AI today. It might not be, but I would just like to take note. And as I move into my next high level slide, which we can move forward, my goal here today is to lighten this conception by sharing some basic tech principles to guide our journey in integrating this technology into our products. And through these principles I'll provide, I feel like you all should start to get a sense of how this operates and feel a lot more comfortable with working with this technology. More specifically, I'll focus on three technical principles, which you can see they're listed here. We'll end up going into detail as we go on. But as I'm going through these technical principles, I'm not going to be getting into mathematical details, talking about how all these derivations are made and how things are trained. I'm going to be doing a lot of high-level hand waving. However, I have a highly technical background, so if anyone ever wants to grab coffee sometime and chat about any of those underlying mechanisms and technologies, I'm happy to do so. The overall goal of today is to leave you with a basic understanding of how Gen AI technology applies to building products. And in doing so, we need to form in-context knowledge of how they work, as well as form strong partnerships with our various teams, our cross-functional teams in our organization. So let's start this journey by covering the first basic problem that is foundational to Gen AI. We only have a short time together today, so I'm going to kind of use Gen AI and LLMs interchangeably. They're not exactly the same thing. Happy to talk about the nuances again over coffee, but today, for the sake of the presentation, I'll use the two interchangeably. So given a block of text, predict the next, we can move on to the next slide, word. So that is the foundation of Gen AI as we know it today. It's just predicting the next word. And then you can also see this image to the right of a 20, it's supposed to be a 20-sided die. This is to represent that at each time I'm predicting this word, the AI, as of today's standards, has about a 1 in 20, a 1 in 20. Sorry, I think we have a wild mic. We have a 1 in 20th chance of picking the correct word. So that's what this dice is representing. I'm not going to go any deeper than this. There's like a whole presentation I gave at Dscout Collab last fall that I believe we can probably share in the channel here that's linked to YouTube that goes very in-depth into this particular aspect in depth. But really, from that presentation, we can move on to the next slide. We've really come to the realization through that entire presentation that AI intelligence is not the same as human intelligence. And this is really the first principle that I want to leave you with today. It is not the same because all AI is doing is predicting the next word. It's not processing the same way humans do. And this is a very important principle in moving forward and building with these products. So we've established AI intelligence is not the same as human intelligence. It's just predicting the next word. The material that is provided prior to the AI helps in predicting that next word. And this is called context. You might hear people talking about context window, context, but overall what you provide to the AI prior to it doing this prediction is context. And the good news is we can provide all types of context. And a lot of times how this is done today is through prompting. You'll hear people talk about prompting. This is really just a fancy way of saying, what instructions and information are you providing to the AI before this next word is predicted? That's all prompting is. So let's dig into this a little deeper. We're going to revisit some of the features that Jonathan talked about earlier. Here's the paragraph summary, and here are the theme summaries that he had shown earlier. So you can imagine that if we're doing this analysis in Dscout and trying to produce these, what could be our context, right? We could provide all of the study participants' information, the responses, research objectives, methods, questions. We could go even as deep as presenting company and product knowledge informing these underlying summaries. So you can see here that my second main principle is context is key. So let's go into a real life example that we experienced at Dscout. So the mission we've been presenting so far has been centered around meal planning, specifically for breakfast meal planning. What we ended up doing was taking that information, putting it in the context window for AI, and then asking questions of it. You might see these in other platforms as the Q&A, the Ask Me Anything bot. That's the idea here, is that they load the context window and then you can ask questions of the AI. So we loaded this data in and we asked the question, do participants like breakfast? The AI used all the responses and comes back with this amazing summary. The participants enjoy many types of breakfast foods and describe it as a part of their meal planning process. And it goes on to talk about all the different types of breakfasts they do and pairings and how it differs on weekends. And this is an amazing answer, but it's flawed. I asked it a question about whether participants like breakfast foods. And if I were to use this output directly as is without applying my own knowledge and context, I would assume that people just love breakfast and they love this type of breakfast and they love meal planning for breakfast. But this particular mission we ran in Dscout, we seeked out a class of people that eat breakfast and also do meal planning. So we are already drilled down into that particular segment. And so you have to take the context of the data you're asking into account when you're asking these questions. And so you have to be very careful. And this is where the human and specialized knowledge is very important. So without providing any type of context, AI might come back if you say, hey, what is the word that fits into this blank? Without any context, AI might say happiness. But because of today and everything we went through, I could show the same thing to everyone in this room, and I really hope that everyone would come back with the right answer at this point. And really, we think of AI as our assistant when we must continually validate and apply context. So does anyone know what this is? It's context is key. That's our second principle. Okay, so we established the context is key, that we can provide it to the AI, but AI can decide what it wants to pay attention to. I put attention in quotes here because you'll hear some more technical people talking about attention of the model, and that is really how they model and mathematically tie information together in it so that it can decide what's important and what isn't. It's essentially the same idea as attention to us. So don't be scared by the lingo here. And this attention causes Gen AI to be stochastic. Stochastic meaning that it can decide what it wants to pay attention to when it wants to pay attention to it. So we could go into text, but I figured a picture's worth 1,000 words here. So I decided to show a prompt that is more focused on pictures because it would be fun. So I ended up coming up with the prompt, a beautiful nature scene with mountains, rivers, and clouds. And I wanted the color scheme to be faded pinks and black. So I passed this over to the AI, and the AI decides what it wants to pay attention to in generating the image. I provided all the context I could. So I ran it 7 times, and these are the images I came back with. See, it mostly sometimes got the colors right, sometimes decided it wasn't important, sometimes decided that the river was more important than the clouds. Most of them, I think all of them have mountains, which is great. It hit that one. But if you notice, some don't quite have clouds, some don't quite have rivers. So it's deciding what is important in the data, and that's what the attention is happening. That's what attention means. And it's also something we really need to take into account. And this is our third principle, is that Gen AI is stochastic. And it's very important to consider this when designing and building products. So Michael walked through the three UX principles from the design perspective and building product perspective. I just presented some more technical Gen AI principles that we need to consider in building our products. At this point, I'd like to open up to Jonathan if I missed anything or if there's anything I need to clarify. And otherwise, we'll open it up for Q&A.
Yeah, the one question did get answered. So right now we're without question, but certainly somebody wants to jump off mic or ask anything or share a principle that they use with the group. Would love to hear it. I'm doing my best. Let the air space fill researcher. I am an extrovert and eager to coax. I guess what I would say is I did see in the chat there's a link provided to Kevin's broader presentation for those that want to go extra deep. It's really wonderful content. And of course, reaching out to Dscout if you're curious about anything that we do from both our product and how it could support you to even just our practices. We love connecting with people in the industry and really value partnership. We were joking earlier how hard it is to make great product, and all of us are really in many facets on that journey.
Jonathan, I think people are actually raising their hands versus typing in Q&A.
Oh, goodness.
Because I just started scrolling through the images. I don't know if people want to list their questions in the Q&A so that if we do, we'll start to try to address them. And then if we aren't able to, maybe we can get you answers after the session. And if you can't find the Q&A feature, we're happy to take a voice question too. I'm just not sure how to call on someone.
Kevin, I actually saw a question in the chat from John that says, how have you found ways, approaches, etc., for Gen AIs to be less stochastic?
Oh, that is a very good question. Short answer is there are techniques. I think like looking into RAG techniques as well as controlling through temperature is very common. However, you still can't we haven't been able to completely remove the stochastic nature of it. And so what we've been doing is designing around the stochastic nature of it and testing around it. And my wife yesterday actually gave a interesting talk on how they handled this at some companies she's worked with in the past from a UX research perspective. And so I would highly recommend going and scanning that video.
Hey, can I ask a question?
Please.
So, given that context is key, and human conversation tends to jump with lots of implied context that carries with it, how does the AI determine what the relevant context is?
That is a very mathematical question. I think the other thing that is really important, I think Sam Altman there was just an article that came out yesterday. My wife mentioned Kevin Roos wrote an article on this as well. And I think the main takeaway is that people that even develop these transformer models don't know quite how it works. If you look at some of the work that Anthropic is working on, they're trying to provide traceability, different techniques for finding traceability and why the models are picking certain things in attention and making certain decisions. And that's a big focus of what they're building, but no one has really come out and said that they truly know how these models work. Even the people who developed it back that work at Google now claim that they're surprised that it can do what it can do.
And maybe to wrap, because we're at time, but to maybe touch on one more point. We've got the last question, which is sort of, and Kevin, maybe you want to take a stab at this, but I could speak to a touch of it also. But what is your experience in seeing power dynamics and systemic biases coming through Gen AI, and how can we mitigate that? And I'll maybe add one interesting thing, Kevin, if you wanted to give it a thought too, is just to say that our research platform, we actually have lots of tools that are there to encourage a really diverse set of research participants, and we have this tight integration with our own private panel. So a lot of our research, the origin content, is from a very diverse group of people, which is different than running it through models, and how are some of these risks in the models that could return biases, but our origin content is broadly very diverse.
Yeah, and that's a really tricky question, because a lot of those biases are coming in through the large model producers and the data that's used for that. The way at Dscout that we've started tackling some of those is through fine-tuning our larger models to be more specific to some data that we're providing, mainly run through kind of like our UXR professionals. Truly doesn't, like, we still have the underlying big model that was built, and that's something that has its own challenges, but that's how we're starting to address that at Dscout.
All right. Well, really appreciate everyone's time and attention today. Again, so excited from all over the world. Really wonderful to see that. And thank you so much. We really appreciate it.
Thanks.